Good morning. It's another freezing day here in Connecticut, but we are going to go out west in search of sunshine and snow and blue sky. I'm going to use my favorite Canson watercolor paper. I'm also going to use the Kuretake watercolors. I'm also going to use this old palette, which is very useful. I'm going to mix up some of the colors that are lurking on this palette, like this orange and a little bit of green, and I'm going to make a nice pale wash over here. So I'm going to add a ton of water and get that a nice pale wash. I'm now going to use some of these other colors looking on here, and I'm going to make a slightly darker wash. So I'm going to pull in some of this old red, this alizarin crimson, and a little bit of turquoise, and a little bit of green. And I'm going to add just a tiny bit of indigo, so I'm sure it's a nice dark wash. So I just test those colors just to make sure that one is nice and pale and one is nice and dark. We're good to go. And this is my inspiration picture, Big Sky Country. First thing I want to do is just draw in that mountain range. And I'm making it just a little bit dark and a little bit more jagged than it actually is, like so. And then I'm going to divide up the areas of these snowfields. And I'm going to give myself a beautiful dramatic sky. So with my pale wash, I start to paint in some clouds. And I always like to paint them in on the diagonal. Here's our big cloud mass coming in. And you're going to leave some white space. Before it has time to dry, you're going to go back into your dark wash and you're going to mix it into the base of the cloud and just let that color just bleed in. I'm going to dilute my darker wash and I'm going to come back in and paint up to my mountain edge. I mix up a little bit more of my dark wash and I'm going to go in at the very bottom, just crisp up these mountains. And look at the way that paint just flows into the wet. It's so beautiful. If it starts to look too regular, like here, it all seems to be 1 inch in length, you can just put a little bit more up. We have a lot of bright blue to put in here, so I mix up just a nice puddle of blue. You'll take a big fat brush and leaving some white, so don't go right up to your cloud, you'll start to paint in the blue sky. If this area is still nice and wet, you can even put some of that blue in over here too. And then you want to leave your sky alone. We want to put some shadow in on our distant mountains, so we take our lightest wash and on the sort of lighter side of the mountain, and one has to be consistent, you'll put in some shadow areas. Nice crisp swoop over the page. You'll go back to your slightly darker wash and you'll put in dark shadows on the other side, the cloudy side of the mountain. So it's always a good idea to step away from a painting and let things dry. And when you come back, you might see you have some problem areas. Like I have these little 2 blue spots here looking like eyes and a third up here. And also my dark side of the mountain isn't quite as dark as I would like it to be. So I'm going to take a little bit of my blue sky color and just extend this a little bit. And I'm going to extend this just a little bit too. I'm also going to restate this dark side by going over in a couple of areas. So given that nothing, absolutely nothing, is wasted in this class, you'll take a piece of scrap paper and you're going to cut a paper mask, sort of something like this. Give it a nice curve. You now want to mix up a green for the pine trees, say this number 53 with a little bit of indigo 67. And I'm going to tone that green down by pulling in a tiny bit of orange over here and mixing it in with the green. So holding your mask in place and starting with your far away, your far distant area of snow, you're just going to start to press down with your brush, with your loaded brush, and make some small trees. And the nice thing about using the mask is it'll give you a good crisp snow line. And then you just lift it off carefully so you have a nice crisp snow line. I then blot this and I move on to another spot. So you just basically press your brush down and flatten it so you get this nice look at these little pine trees in the distance. It's very fast, very fun, very effective. Little ones separate, further away, even smaller. And once you have the foreground ones, if you want to, you can add a few more in the background, getting smaller. Same brush stroke, just pressing down, using the tip of the brush. And you can even jump back a bit and make them even smaller, just at the base of this mountain over here. So I cut a fresh strip for the next area of snow so that I'm not working with wet paper. And now these are going to be just slightly bigger. So these may be 2 brush strokes instead of just the 1. Cut another strip. Add some more. So you have a fresh strip and you're going to do the last area, and this time you're going to make your trees just a little bit bigger. So you now have a fabulous, free, loose landscape. It's the perfect thing to just remind yourself that there is a good side to winter. Now to finish off, if I want to just deal with the sort of the crusty edge of this cloud, I can take some clean water and just soften it. So I take some clean water and I just soften it and I just create a more interesting shape with it. I can even bleed a little bit of blue or a little bit of darker paint into it if I want. So in the same way here and also here, I can wet the paint and repeat the process. And in the same way, if I want to add more interest to my trees in the foreground, I can do that too. I go back with a darker, slightly darker green. I paint in some vertical strokes, and then I go back and forth, adding in the suggestion of branches. But you want to leave lots and lots of white space. Just make sure they're not all the same height. I love these quick, loose landscape studies, and I hope that you'll enjoy painting them too.